Just want to say thank you for inviting me, and it's been really inspirational to be part of this meeting today. And in the interest of time, I will kick off with my short introduction and an account of my journey in the industry of research and innovation as well. So I'd like to start with a bit of background about myself. Right now, I'm the founder and chief executive officer of Floretic Limited. We're a multi-award winning UK startup. And prior to that, I was a member of the UK Department for International Trade Global Entrepreneur Program. And as part of my career, I've also held an enterprise fellowship at the Quantum Technology Enterprise Center. And prior to that, I was in research within the photonics group at the University of Bristol. And during that time, I authored 14 publications, and some of my favorites went to international conferences in New York, Shanghai, and Beijing. Academically, I did undergraduate and a PhD in electrical and electronic engineering, but I haven't been with the university for a little while, so just a little bit of an update there. So on a daily basis, I lead an interdisciplinary team of scientists and business leaders, and we're tackling major diagnostic challenges. We all share a common vision that everyone should receive the optimal antibiotic treatment from their first visit to the doctor, because it saves time, it saves money, and ultimately it will save lives. And to that end, we've been developing, in fact, we invented and patented a novel test called Nanoplex. And the entire thesis around it is to reduce the time to diagnose bacterial infections from 2 days to 15 minutes. And the benefits of that is wide reaching. So over the next minute or so, I'll share a short video which explains the basis of the test and how it works. So changing gears a little bit, how did I end up working on tests for urine-based infectious diseases? Well, back in 2000, I did all of my early education and even up to A levels in St. Lucia. I went to St. Mary's College. I'm very proud of that. And there I studied mostly science subjects. And in 2005, went on to Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, and not unlike many other young St. Lucians, where I focused on math, chemistry, and biology. I even forgot it for a while there. In 2007, I was really fortunate to be awarded one of 3 Island Scholar full scholarships to pursue education outside of St. Lucia. But before taking up that offer, I actually spent 2 years working with my oldest brother, Sebastian, at IDC. And that gave me a really good foundation and grounding before going off to study outside of St. Lucia. So from 2009 to 2012, I actually did an undergraduate degree in electrical and electronic engineering. And as part of that program, the honors program, we were all required to do a short research project with one of the research groups within the department. And my particular project was actually, it was my first exposure to structured research. And it involved modeling wireless signal propagation, so how Wi-Fi signal spreads in the house. And that is a lot more complicated than it actually sounds, but it was for an important purpose. At the time, the research group was trying to figure out how do we guarantee that every corner of a house has Wi-Fi signal. And the reason for this is because we're looking at smart houses, houses where an older person who is reliant on care from third parties could potentially live independently. And so they're probably wearing some kind of gadget like a Fitbit, which monitors their vitals. And so you need to make sure that no matter where they are in the house, if something were to happen, you could always pick up on that. And so that was a really good introduction um, to research. And in 2012, I graduated top of my class and then moved back to St. Lucia for a few months before the university got in touch and offered me a scholarship to come back for a PhD within the photonics group. Now, my research there was focused on nano antenna technology. So that's effectively, I spent time researching ways to make tiny structures about 1,000th of the size of the human hair to manipulate light on that tiny scale. And I'll mention the application again because a lot of the reason I'm still in research and innovation is because of the outcomes and how it could improve life. And so the application of that was to pick up on very small signatures for early detection of oil spills and even for monitoring water quality. So that work was actually funded by a Swiss company called ABB. And if you're not familiar with the name, you may have seen their products if you've ever looked at an Iron Man film, because those robots were actually made by ABB, the ones that assembled his suit. So after finishing the PhD in 2016, I actually went on to do a short research contract, building again on the theme of applied research. It was a short contract between the University of Bristol, Cardiff University, and Bath University. And we were using our collective knowledge to find new ways to accelerate the detection of hospital-acquired infections. And that was, I think, probably one of the catalysts for the direction that Fluoretica has taken. But it was also aided by an enterprise fellowship that I was awarded by QTech while still on that program. And QTech effectively paid for me to retrain at Cranfield School of Management. So I did business training to commercialize research of my choosing. So that was a very rare and really good opportunity, which I think was a pivotal point in my career. Now, I was asked to share some of the challenges that I faced along the way, and I've just highlighted 3 of them, and I think it'll apply to most of us who are in this space, and I'll share them nonetheless. So the first is the complexity of it. The thing about research and innovation in and of itself is you're often tackling problems that um, problems of human curiosity that people before you haven't necessarily addressed. And so there's limited information to know whether you're on the right track or not. And so you kind of have to go through the process iteratively. And as part of that, you tend to get, well, for me, I had to get comfortable with complexity. And even more so in my current role, I do need to get comfortable with complexity of going through that problem solving process. The next element is competition. It's not immediately obvious when you look at the field, but research, academic research in particular, and even innovation is a very competitive space. And I'll explain what I mean by that by way of numbers. So if you take the UK, for example, every year, 8,500 people graduate with PhDs. And as of last night, there are about 1,400 jobs available in research. And so even if you're fortunate enough to get one of those roles, it becomes really competitive to retain those roles and to move on to tenureship or professorship. And so it's really important to always be at your best, any opportunity that you have to show up and to deliver your best because the space is really competitive. the third element, and that one's a little bit tricky to explain, but rejection. So throughout your research career, your work will be judged by a jury of your peers, and you have to get comfortable with criticism. Sometimes it's constructive, other times it's not really, but you do have to get comfortable with criticism. And even when you've cracked a very important research question or generated new information, it's not guaranteed that the journal of your choice would actually publish your work. So it's another area of resilience that you need to build up. But it's not all doom and gloom. I've also assembled some of the thoughts behind what I think contributed to my success or the success I've enjoyed so far. And I'll just put a caveat here that this is very much subjective. And so these are my own. And if anyone would like to use them, please feel free to do so. The first I would point out is dedication. And I'll elaborate on this by way of an example. I mentioned that during my PhD, I was developing nano antennas. So these tiny structures. In fact, they were 1/10 millionth of a meter in size, which pushes the boundaries of what you could engineer reproducibly. So it took me about 6 months to actually come up with my first viable sample. And even then, although it was viable, it didn't work the way I expected it to. So I had to go around that loop continuously in order to get the success that I was looking for. The next important element, and this cannot be overstated, is the support network. I've been really fortunate from a very young age and even to now to have family and friends and people around me who continuously believed in me and pushed me to keep going and encouraging me and opening doors for me. And today is one of those examples. So I can't overstate this one, that is really important to have a good support network. And I'll come back to this later on when I talk about recommendations. And the final piece is the hand of God. And this is very true. And I'll explain this by way of example again, that for those of us who are familiar with the Island Scholar Award, it's usually given to 2 people each year. But in 2007, if I'm not mistaken, an exception was actually made to award it to 3 of us. And so that opened the door to my research career. The next element is that I'm a St. Lucian running a tech business in the UK. And we've been really fortunate to have had investment from both public and private sector to develop both the technology and the business. So I'll stop sharing for a second. And in terms of my suggestions around innovation and what we could do back home, from what I could see, we have all of the backbone elements to actually drive an innovation ecosystem. So over here, it is really a big industry. Every time you hear of companies like Microsoft, we'll be speaking later, these companies are knowledge-intensive companies. They are by nature research-intensive companies, and they do well for the public through the products they release, and also for the taxman through the revenues they return. And so it really does require input and support from the government to actually build this ecosystem. So I'll give a few suggestions of how that happens. The first is in innovation grants. I know that for certain, my company has been really fortunate with a number of innovation grants that helped us bootstrap in the early days. And for some investors, that was actually a requirement to have some kind of government backing behind you before they put some money in. The second element is around tax reform. Small companies, small businesses contribute significantly to the economy. And if you want growth in an economy, you actually want to encourage small businesses, and generating small businesses, they create employment and they create tax revenue. And so one of the things that has been done over here, and I know for certain it is being done in other countries as well that I've visited, is investor relief. So if someone in this room has supported our colleagues who've been working on the desalination plant, we should incentivize that. We should incentivize people to actually put their hard-earned money into supporting the pioneers of the future, who can create products and services to better the country and the world at large. And finally, I think the other element is more of a regional one. We've got a stock exchange. We've got several of them, and that is an exit route. So you typically have, exits via trade sale or through public sale of businesses, and that's how investors make their money back. But our stock exchange is very inactive. I wouldn't be able to go today and purchase a stock in a Caribbean business or a St. Lucian business on the basis that we haven't really encouraged everyone to participate in that part of the economy. And so I think these are areas that we could tackle to actually create more opportunities for people within the country to build new ideas, to build on them, to see that there's a future and success in it. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak and to share. And I do hope the rest of the program goes well.